Reviewing Life is Feudal in Early Access is a lot like reviewing a moose. It sure looks tasty, but there's really nothing there, and yes, it might be a great big moose with alluring sprinkles, but it's still a £25 moose, which is too much moose for me. Life is Feudal will be, in the very distant future, a realistic, hardcore, sandbox, medieval MMO. And if you're wondering what the hell a realistic, hardcore, sandbox, medieval MMO looks like, it's closest to a combination of Rust and, of all things, RuneScape. Free-range players are released onto an unspoiled island and left to get on with shaping the world according to the tools of Middle Ages man. These tools include forestry, logging, carpentry, prospecting, mining, smelting, farming, alchemy, construction materials preparation. Okay, that last one was less sexy, but as you have complete freedom of choice, you could just ignore it and become a much more virile armorsmith. The idea is that feudal communities will grow up centered on these skills. But this game is a free-looting PvP sandbox, and anyone who has set foot in DayZ knows that open-world PvP spells the end for civilization. Hell, I have a documentary series on some of the most appalling psychopathy in gaming. But I confess myself impressed by the system Life is Feudal uses to quell sadists, a good old-fashioned skill cap. It's enchantingly elegant. Each skill in your repertoire can be leveled up to 100, but there's a hard limit of 600 overall. No one player can possibly master the lot. Participation in a social economy is essential for progression, and over time we should witness emergent trading hubs, cities, kingdoms, and social groups. Or we would if Life is Feudal were anything like the MMO of its ambitions. This is the earliest of early access. Baby horse standing up for the first time early access, wobbling its way towards basic functionality. Currently, Life is Feudal exists on private servers of up to a maximum 64 players. Servers I've come to know as administrative republics. Because the admin sets the parameters. You can't master everything with a skill cap of 600, but when it's set to 3000, you are Leonardo da fucking Vinci, multitasking man-god of the Middle Ages. Custom servers and low populations preclude all possibility of community cohesion. But let's say you do find a default server and settle down to the humble life of a carpenter. Don't expect to be at it for long. Alpha builds aren't known for optimization, but Life is Feudal is so unstable it appears on the Richter scale. Search for a rock? Crash. Witness an undersea battle between a moose and a wolf? Crash. Want to use speakers instead of headphones? Crash. It's like a fucking drunk driver. Crashes are expected in early access. Fine. But it's a good job those loading screens are pretty because load times regularly pass the 15-minute mark. On the plus side, I have caught up on a lot of telly. There's more. I am entirely incapable on my main rig, laptop, home network, or the randomer's Wi-Fi I borrowed to connect to any server hosting more than about 5 people. So I have no clue if the combat's any good. I'm unable to meet anyone. In all fairness, I did once glimpse another player, but as my Superclock 780 Ti was spitting out 4 frames per second on medium settings, I wasn't exactly equipped for a tourney. Interestingly, the same settings on my laptop's more weedy 860M produce a stable-ish 25 FPS. So the definitive answer to the question, will this run on my system, is, are you feeling lucky? But today I'm handing out benefit of the doubt like Tic Tac, so let's say that everything works fine. My god, it's dull. I am very aware that the footage I have been showing you is dull. You can watch your crafting skills go to work. You can watch the crafting bar fill time and time again for every action from snapping branches to dropping rocks, but you don't truly do any of it. Now, I'm a survival obsessive. I get pleasure from tramping across the countryside to interact with the one lone water pump for 1,000 miles. But there's so little feedback and interactivity in Life is Feudal's actions that it's less like survival and more like Excel. 15 minutes. That's how long it took me to carve one chunk of tunnel using the terraforming skill. 15 minutes of selecting from a menu and watching the progress bar do its thing. That is the current state of this skill system, so full of promise, but devoid of all substance. I crave what this game will someday offer, but struggling against such an early build is futile, not feudal.